Okay, that brings us to our speaker. The subject tonight is conservation programs at the National Aquarium. Hallie Carter is our guest speaker. She's a conservation project manager at the National Aquarium, where she's responsible for overseeing planning and coordination for the aquarium's various community habitat restoration events. Originally from Southern California, she moved to Maryland to attend the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, the Retrievers, and compete on the varsity volleyball team. She graduated in 2014 with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and a minor in sociology. She credits her professors at UMBC for sparking a passion for conservation restoration and the natural history of the Chesapeake Bay. In her spare time, Hallie takes care of her friends' dogs, enjoys hiking, playing board games, coaching, playing volleyball, and probably the most important thing she's going to talk to you about, that she's the reason she's kind of here, I think, to do recruiting, is she's involved with the City Nature Challenge, which we participated in last year. The next City Nature Challenge will be from April 25th to April 28th of this year. And I hope she probably hopes you're marking it on your calendar. Welcome.
I never know what to permit when people ask for a bio, so hopefully that was fun information. All right, well, I've been introduced. I'm Hallie Carter. It's nice to meet you. I do have a presentation for you tonight. I'm going to be talking about the aquarium at large. I'm going to be talking about sort of our mission, how conservation and habitat restoration kind of fits into that. It's a little bit weird. I promise I'll explain it. And then I'm going to go into my department and some of the things that we do, and how that overlaps a little bit with hobbyists as well and all the passionate people across Maryland. But if at any point you have a question about what I'm actively talking about, feel free to ask. I'll also leave time at the end to answer any random questions you might have that I might not cover or might not relate to any of my slides. But I'll get started. So first and foremost, the National Aquarium is obviously a very large tourist attraction here in Maryland, the #1 tourist attraction. We see about 1 million people per year, but we do not consider ourselves to be just an aquarium. No shade thrown at other aquariums or zoos that are just aquariums or zoos. But from our core, we consider ourselves a conservation organization first. The mission for the National Aquarium is to connect people with nature to inspire compassion and care for our ocean planet. Lots of fancy words, fancy people, made a fancy mission statement. But ideally, at the core of everything that goes on in the building, out of the building, every employee is going to connect to this in some way, and that is our goal. We have about 180 full-time staff members, and then anywhere between 100 to 150, depending on the season, part-time staff members. And that's not even factoring in volunteers. I think pre-COVID, the height of our volunteerism, we had more than 1,000 active volunteers. Those numbers have dipped a little bit post-COVID, but it's still a lot of volunteer hours and a lot of work goes into running the building and all the different programs that we do. So I want to talk a little bit again about how that mission factors into the aquarium at large before I get into the niche of my department. So we really think about conservation all across our visitor experience. You can see it across our building. From the moment that the building was opened. I don't know how many of you have seen this famous picture before, but it is the former mayor of Baltimore. Also, I think the former governor of Maryland. Again, I'm not from here. I've picked up everything I've learned since I moved here. But yes, former mayor, Baltimore Mayor William Donald Schaefer famously promised that the aquarium would open on a specific day. It did not, in fact, open on that day. It opened 6 months later. And the promise that he made, if he was wrong, was that he would go swimming in the seal pool. So he put on his old-fashioned bathing suit and went swimming in the seal pool the day that it opened. He was the real benefactor that spearheaded a aquarium being on the harbor. That was part of his view for the future of Baltimore. Different things have changed across the Inner Harbor in Baltimore City over the last 40 plus years that we've been open, but the aquarium is still a pillar of the Inner Harbor. And so he was a huge part of that. Over that time, we've opened 2 additional buildings. So we have the big glass building up front. That is the newest building. It is home to our Australia exhibit, lots of very cool Australia birds. Again, National Aquarium, lots of birds in the building, fun fact. But we have that Australia exhibit up front. We have our rainforest exhibit in the back, and that's the main original aquarium. And then across the bridge, we have the dolphins and jellies. But all of this, despite being an older building, has been retrofitted to sort of fit some of the newer needs of the modern times, to try and make it as energy efficient as possible, to try and bring as much greenery as possible into the space. We have a green roof in different areas of the building where we can fit it, just to give more habitat for pollinators, for birds. We have those planters out front that are modeled after the different landscapes across Maryland, starting with the Appalachian, then to the Piedmont Plain, then to the coastal plain. And we have our harbor wetland exhibit that I'll talk about a little bit later. I don't want to spoil that a little bit too much, but lots of cool animals both inside and outside that you're seeing sort of from that experience walking around the building. We also talk a whole lot about how to take conservation action to help the planet. And again, we're showcasing that in the building. For a number of years, and I've been at the aquarium for a long time, so I apologize if I can't remember exactly when. I want to say it was at least 7 or 8 years ago. We made the switch in our building to no longer have any single-use plastics at all. So anything that you buy in the aquarium, whether it is from the gift shop all the way to the cafes or whatnot, is going to be either glass or aluminum or entirely compostable. We wanted to make sure that if we're talking to people in the building about ways to cut back on plastic pollution in the environment and whatnot, that we're not then handing them the very things that contribute to that. This is a pile of straws from one day of a debris cleanup that we held at Fort McHenry, where we just pulled out every individual straw in an effort to try and get a straw ban passed in Baltimore City. We were unsuccessful. We have been successful in some other endeavors in terms of keeping track of data. But this is sort of where some of that why is coming from. There are going to be people that come into the building that are not as far along on their conservation journey. Maybe they don't fully have a connection to nature and they don't fully understand, but we want to make sure that we're meeting people where they are and also giving them an opportunity to make good conservation decisions while they're in the building moving around. Then from the exhibits and animal husbandry side, we also have to talk about how that influences conservation. It doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but the primary goal for a lot of zoos and aquariums is to protect nature. So it's not just as an entertainment or an educational facility, which it really is. People come in, they learn, kids especially are like, oh my God, I saw an octopus and now I want to save every octopus that I've ever seen. They're so cool. And that is a really, really critical part of the role. But the behind the scenes is that just caring for the animals in our care and our collection goes a long way to helping their counterparts out in the wild. Something that I did not know until I started working for the aquarium is that the zoology field, or the vets that work in these institutions, it's kind of like the wild, wild west. They go to vet school. A lot of these animals, they have no idea what their systems look like inside. So they're having to constantly compare and contrast between this fish that they know and this fish that they know and whatnot. And so a lot of having these animals in our collection is learning a little bit more about their needs, how we can meet those needs, and it helps us be informed about what things might be happening in their habitats or natural environments that can be harming them, and then we can go out and make informed decisions. We're also pretty good. Any institution that is AZA certified, it's a very intense process. You have to go through it every 5 years. It's very intense in terms of animal welfare and having different standards. So the animals that we have in our collection are ones that have been shown to thrive under human care. And I have sort of the whole gambit represented here. I've got a zebra shark, I've got a dolphin, got a very adorable puffin chick down at the bottom. But that is a huge component. It's just some of that research and information can go a really, really long way to helping us care for animals out in the wild. There's also examples where you're maintaining viable species populations and genetic diversity in case we ever need to supplement the natural population. I think the most notable example of that is with the California condor. And those animals were able to be released, and that population was stabilized specifically because of work that zoos did in California. Same sort of thing, it can go a long way in terms of making sure that we're protecting species out in the wild. Some of those are specific projects where we're intentionally keeping animals that are going to be released. So in the last 5 years, there's been some severe bleaching incidents for coral in Florida, and a lot of scientists down there recognizing that it was a dire situation, a lot of coral might die off, went and harvested some of the coral to save it before it died. And then they've gone to some institutions to be cared for to maintain that species diversity. And we're just caring for that coral until we can solve some of the problems in Florida and then plant them back exactly where they were found. So we're not the only institution. That's another example of the exhibits and animal husbandry team really walking that conservation walk as well. You've seen similar things with like Panamanian golden frogs and other things like that, where zoos and aquariums are doing that direct conservation work and helping to revitalize some of those species populations. Another great example of that is our animal rescue program. This one gets talked about a little bit more because people love looking at turtles and seals. Charismatic megafauna, I get it. Literally 2 days ago, maybe, it might have even been yesterday, we just released about 40 sea turtles down in Cape Canaveral, Florida. We are part of a network of organizations up and down the East Coast that help to treat and rehabilitate cold-stunned sea turtles. That is most of the sea turtles that we have come through our program. They're ones that get stranded up in the Cape Cod area. They follow their food, it's nice. They're chasing them around in Cape Cod. They get really confused, it gets cold, they try to swim south. That doesn't work, there's land in the way, and eventually they get too cold and they wash ashore. So the New England Aquarium and a lot of institutions up there have a really good response team. So they're able to go out, find those turtles, bring them in, do that initial triage. And for ones that just need to have their temperature re-upped and they can go back out and they don't have secondary problems, they can handle them. But there's too many turtles for them to deal with like some of the longer term cases. So then they send the turtles that need a little bit longer of a rehab stint down to different institutions for that stretch of time. So we are one of those institutions. We get somewhere between 30 to 60 turtles a year. We also respond to marine wildlife in Maryland, so that'll be seals, sometimes dolphins and whales. We cannot bring the dolphins and whales into our facilities without risk of cross-contamination, but we are set up to receive seals. So I would say every year we receive somewhere between 1 to 5 seals, just depending on the stranding events. These animals aren't on exhibit. People can't go see them. They're completely off-site. They are cared for in a way where they're as removed from humans as possible so that they don't have any of that attachment, to make sure that they're nice and ready to go back out into the wild and thrive. So again, this one gets talked about a little bit more. Everyone loves a good rescue story, but it does align with a lot of that vision that I was talking about. These are some photos from our rehab pool. So the turtles will come in, they'll get a nice little number on them. They have some buddies they can hang out with. The volunteers and staff will get in waders and check on them and weigh them and get them food. But then they'll get released back out into the ocean, which is quite fun. And then finally, this one's a little bit newer, but I wanted to make sure I included this as well. In the last 4 years or so, we've really tried to look at the backside of our operations to figure out how we can sort of walk the walk in terms of that conservation. So for us, that means looking at our waste stream, which can be really intimidating. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to do that just in their own home, but it gets a little scary. But we have conducted a few different waste audits across all the different buildings in all the different buildings for the aquarium. We have an offsite warehouse, we have our main aquarium building, and then we have an office building as well. And so we've done waste audits across those to try and figure out what sorts of areas of opportunities we had, how we can cut out some of that trash, how we can make sure that things are being sorted properly so that recycling actually gets recycled, make sure we're composting things, which is very, very cool. We just instituted new waste bins across all of our staff spaces, and I think we've already cut down on contamination and total waste by like 40%, which is wild because it was like 2 months ago. And people definitely still don't know what goes what. Like I had to stop someone from putting something in their recycling bin today. I'm like, that's not recyclable. But even with that in mind, we've already cut down on it a lot, which is very, very cool. Same thing with our energy source. This one is a lot harder. We're not the only ones involved, but we have publicly stated that we have a goal to be net zero by 2035. So that is not that far off. That's 10 years from now. We announced this 3 or 4 years ago. Since then, we've had a solar tree installed on site. Most of our power is still coming from wind and solar sources that we have worked with Constellation Energy to be the ones that are outfitting our building with power. And then we're slowly upgrading the infrastructure in our building. So the thing that's holding us off to 2035 is about 5 years before we made this pledge, we bought fancy new boilers. And those boilers last, 20 years. So we're not going to waste a perfectly good boiler. But as soon as we can really replace those boilers with those net zero ones, that'll be the last domino to fall in this great pillar. But again, we can't just talk about how important it is to take action on climate change and all those things if we're not willing to do the hard work behind the scenes. So all of this is going on within the larger conglomerate that is the National Aquarium. And we use what we call our conservation action plan to guide a lot of that. So some of these things seem really big and obvious, but for the person who is welcoming guests into the 4D theater, they might have a hard time being like, how is what I'm doing contributing to this larger conservation action plan and to our mission? So again, our goal is to connect people with nature to drive that conservation action. We want people to care, and there are 3 areas that we feel like we should talk about and that we have a place to talk about, and that is climate change, saving wildlife and habitats, and stopping plastic pollution. As an institution representing a lot of ocean ecosystems, tidal ecosystems, river ecosystems, water is very important. Plastic pollution is a huge nuisance, not only in the ocean, but also on land. That's something that we feel like is incredibly important. Same thing with climate change. Climate change is the biggest threat facing pretty much the entire planet. And so we want to really strive to do as much as we can, both as an organization and in inspiring community and pushing the government as much as a nonprofit can, non-politics, but just advocating for science, and then working to save different habitats and protect those really critical ecosystems. So those are the areas that we're focused on that we feel like we can make a difference with as the aquarium. And we do that in 3 different ways. So we work to protect and restore the environment, we care and advocate for animals, and we educate and empower people. So again, this is the roadmap for all of the work that the aquarium is doing. And now my department is starting to make a whole lot more sense. That's what we're going to get into. So we are one of the few institutions that has a dedicated conservation programs department that is as robust as ours is. We have 11 full-time staff working in conservation. So that's all the way from the vice president of conservation to our conservation technicians. So all across the board. We are split into 2 teams. So there's one side, that's the side that I am on. I'm the conservation project manager for the field conservation team. And then we have a sister team called the Conservation Community Engagement Team. I'm going to go through what we do and some of our projects, but know that there is going to be some overlap. It's more how we approach different projects is the difference between our 2 teams. So for our field conservation team, we're a little bit more of the get out, get dirty, habitat restoration team. So we're focused on the habitat restoration and those metrics first and foremost. And along that way, we want to bring people out to help as a form of stewardship. So hard numbers, hard restoration is the top goal, engagement and stewardship is the secondary goal. What we recognize is that the National Aquarium exists within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We have this broad audience that we can talk to. We have this unique position along the mid-Atlantic to influence things all across the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and that is the waterway that we are primarily focused on. again, there's lots of issues across the world. There's lots of important milestones or landmarks, but we are positioned here in Baltimore, and this is what we are going to focus our energy on because we think that's where we can have the most impact and make the biggest difference. We are focused on a number of different things. Because our larger overarching goal is just to connect people with nature and get them to take part in that conservation action, it doesn't always mean that I'm out 5 days a week planting wetland grasses or in the wetland. I'm going to be spread across a lot of different projects as long as it falls within that umbrella. That's one of the things that I like about my job is that we do a lot of different things. So on the bottom, you can see a picture from Fort McHenry. You can tell that it's an old picture because you can still see the bridge in the background. But that is our Fort McHenry wetland. So we'll spend a lot of time there in those wetland ecosystems, whether it's restoring them or just leading nature programs, bird walks, seining for fish, leading debris cleanups, whatnot. We also will plant trees, so it's not just limited to grasses, dune grasses, wetland grasses, shrubs, things like that. We'll also plant trees along the eastern shore. We participate in community science. It really is spread all across the board. It would be really difficult for me to touch on everything, so I'm just trying to give you guys a broad look at that. Again, we're focused on the Chesapeake Bay watershed as a whole. Historically, we've had project sites that have ranged all the way up into the Finger Lakes in New York. We've worked at all these different wetland sites along the Chesapeake Bay. We even go down to the naval bases in Virginia Beach at least once a year to help maintain sand dune habitats down there. So we really are kind of spread all across, and it's more of that direct, hard habitat restoration and that science data research aspect of things. One of those projects is at Nassawango Creek Preserve, which is over in Worcester County in Snow Hill, Maryland. We've been working with the Nature Conservancy for about 15 years at that project site. So the Nature Conservancy is a nonprofit that purchases areas of land to preserve it for different ecosystems and to sort of patchwork together a nice section of land for public to use. So you can go on to Nassawango and you can go hiking, you can go hunting, all sorts of things depending on the season. But it's really purchasing that land and helping to maintain those ecosystems for the animals. And this particular site was historically an Atlantic white cedar swamp. It had been bought and drained and turned into a loblolly pine farm. And when the Nature Conservancy bought it back, we've been slowly trying to reestablish that native population. So that involves things like control burning. I do not do that. The Nature Conservancy does that. I'm not trained to use fire. But control burn, very, very important to help clear some of that and reinvigorate the soil. They added water in to change the hydrology of the forest. Up on the top, you'll see a picture. I don't know if I got one that had an Atlantic white cedar in it as well, but the Atlantic white cedar swamps also share ecosystems with bald cypress. So this one, you can see those bald cypress knees sticking out. It's always my favorite part of walking through the swamps. We have those saplings, so those are Atlantic white cedar trees. Again, we plant those in work with the community, but we also work with students in Worcester County to bring them out to the site for a site visit to help plant some of those trees. So it is a very, very cool project and one that we really, really love doing. That's helping to reestablish some of that pivotal swamp ecosystem. Every year we bring this one school, it's Berlin Intermediate, and the teacher there is a very avid birder, and he has his students have a running list of every bird that they see. It's very, very cool. I don't see all of them. Sometimes they're pointing at a plane. I'm like, that's not a bird. But some of them get some real good sights. And I'm much better with bugs than I am with birds. But from what I can tell, there are a lot of birds in that ecosystem, and he enjoys visiting every year. So this is my plug for Nassawango Creek Preserve if you ever find yourself in Snow Hill. Fort McHenry, this one's probably a little bit more familiar. So Fort McHenry, there is a wetland. You can see it. I don't remember how to do the laser pointer. Oh, found it. Okay, look, Fort McHenry wetland, you can see over here. This was a mitigation project for the 95 tunnel. So when they built it, they needed to offset those environmental costs. And what they chose to do was to reestablish some of the native wetland ecosystem that would have existed all along Baltimore City, that tidal marshland. They did. It was great. They realized, man, this is really hard to maintain. So in 1999, they passed off stewardship of the land to the National Aquarium Field Conservation Team. So we've been taking care of that wetland for the last 25 years. Through that, we host yearly debris cleanups, at least twice a year. I really like the top photo because it's our CEO and we actually got him to come out and get dirty. And so I wanted to make sure I got it in the presentation for proof that it got very dirty, helping to pick up trash. The Patapsco River goes underground in a lot of places in Baltimore City, and Fort McHenry is one of the first green spaces where trash can wash ashore. So there's always going to be, well, I shouldn't say always, it's the first place where trash can wash ashore. And even when people don't litter intentionally on the ground, trash ends up blowing different places. So there's almost always going to be trash that washes ashore there. But it's a great opportunity to get people out, to make a difference. We collect data at all of our debris cleanups. So we're keeping track of the number of chip bags that we pick up, styrofoam cups, utensils, cigarello tips is the big one in Baltimore City. Once you start seeing them, you can't unsee them. But all of that data we use not only to inform our own actions, but we use to advocate for different policies. So the styrofoam ban that was passed in Baltimore was informed mostly by the fact that when we were picking up trash at our cleanups, 70% of it was styrofoam. So in the time since we've passed it, those numbers have dropped dramatically. I could pull up a chart. It doesn't show up very well on the chart because we pick up things and we track things by pieces. And so when you're picking up a styrofoam cup, that's one piece. But then styrofoam breaks down and it's suddenly 20 pieces. So there might not be any new styrofoam or very few new styrofoam being added, but the legacy styrofoam is breaking down. So the metrics don't quite align. But if you look at like the cups and plates and things like that, we've picked up a dramatic difference since that ban was passed. So we keep track of all that data. It really, really helps to inform a lot of things going through different areas. And then if you want the self-satisfaction of this, I always like doing this. This is what it looks like before one of our cleanups. This is what it looks like after. Again, you can't get every single piece of trash. If you try, you'll go crazy, but you can get a whole lot of it and you can make a big difference for a lot of the animals and people that are going to be using that space. I don't know how many, I feel like birders know everybody. There's a woman that volunteers with us named Wendy Alexander, and she leads bird clubs there, or bird club walks there. So that is the ecosystem that you're walking through if you ever joined her. If you haven't, you can probably find her and join her on her bird walks at Fort McHenry. Like I said, wanted to talk about our harbor wetlands. This is our newest exhibit. This is my most favorite thing that the aquarium has ever done since I've worked there, and I've worked there for nearly 10 years. So this is a floating wetland ecosystem. We had several different prototypes, but the final prototype, you can see the design up top. It has different layers of PET with cord grass growing out of it, providing a channel for things to move through. And then we scaled it up from the 400 square foot prototype to approximately 8,000 square feet. This just opened officially in August. We planted it last May. There is a learning dock that people can come down onto. So as long as the aquarium is open, this exhibit is open for free. So people walking through Baltimore City do not need to have a ticket to the aquarium to see our harbor wetland exhibit. They can walk and just enjoy the park. There's some shade structures. Sometimes there's staff out there to help interpret. Sometimes there's animals. If people are noisy, maybe there's less animals. I think there, again, gotta remember, I'm not the best birder. I think there's been like a shoveler out there recently. That's what my boss keeps talking about. The main thing that people keep freaking out about and that we keep stalking is there are 2 river otters that have been showing up nightly to hang out and sleep on the wetlands. So my one coworker has set up a lot of game cameras. It's actually kind of a little bit creepy, but it's fine. It's for science. We're collecting their scat. But it's been a very, very successful exhibit. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this one. And the design of it is not just to establish some of that habitat. To me, what makes this really cool is that it's kind of the future of conservation in my eyes. We live in cities, we live in urban areas, even when we live in suburban areas, there's a lot of people. So how we as humans can best find ways to work with nature in harmony, what sorts of innovative solutions can we find to reestablish habitat in a way that doesn't work against human industry is sort of the future. So Baltimore City all used to be tidal marshland before development. It's all hardened shorelines. But we're not gonna just demolish the port and get rid of all of the hardened shorelines. That's not really a solution. So things like this that can dramatically increase that habitat for these animals and provide a lot of the benefits of wetlands while working within that framework, that's the future of conservation. So I think that's very cool. Outside of just seeing the animals come and use it, it's also helped with water quality. So the water quality up and down the Chesapeake Bay is a hot topic. The Inner Harbor itself, also a hot topic. But the areas around the harbor wetland and the floating wetland prototype that we had, they're not dramatically better or dramatically, well, they're not worse. They're not dramatically better than everywhere else in the harbor. But when the harbor has a significant event, so any of those turnovers, any of those algae blooms, the area around the wetland is significantly more stable. So it does provide a safe haven for a lot of those naturally occurring events that happen that might have a significant impact on those animals. So we are able to stabilize and provide that safe haven, which to me, again, is very, very important. So it's already been a very successful exhibit, and it's not even celebrated its first birthday yet. If you haven't gone yet, I would also recommend. There's probably some other cool birds out there. Not that I could recognize them, but why not? All right, this is the thing I'm most excited to talk about because it's most applicable to you all, which is, again, we work within community science a lot. Our main goal as the National Aquarium, when we're talking about community science, is to demystify science. I feel like you are all sitting in this room right now because you have found a thing that you think is cool, and you have all become experts on it. You did not just start out as bird experts, except for Josh, who started out as a bird expert. But with the exception of him, the rest of us have had to learn and scrap to get all of our knowledge. And you got to start somewhere. So for community science, for me, this is the thing that I really, really love to talk about because it's just getting the ordinary people out and exploring, being like, I saw a cool bird over there. I wonder what that is. Or I have never seen this mushroom before in my life. I must take a picture of it and figure out what it is. And the City Nature Challenge is a really great opportunity to do that. It is a 4-day challenge. It started as a friendly competition between San Francisco and Los Angeles, and then it grew and blossomed into a 400 city plus international competition. Friendly competition, so competition is maybe not the best word. We can try to beat DC. It's so hard. They have so many people. There's so many people, but one day maybe we'll beat DC. It's probably not gonna be this year, but we can try really hard. But for the Baltimore area, the Baltimore metropolitan area encompasses the counties that are highlighted here. I did not pick these counties. Do not ask me why Queen Anne's is on this list. I just was handed this project a number of years ago. Point is, they're part of the Baltimore metropolitan area. So anyone who's in Anne Arundel, in Howard County, in Carroll County, Baltimore City, Hartford, whatnot, during the 4-day stretch of the challenge, if you make observations, they count towards our numbers. So the goal of the international challenge is to increase urban biodiversity data. As populations continue to increase, as areas get more urbanized, we want to learn more so that we can be more informed about how people like me can do habitat restoration that actually works and helps stabilize populations. We also want to track how climate change is affecting things. If populations are moving further north, that's one of my favorite things about iNaturalist too, is there's a couple of examples where it's really been the forefront of breaking science. So there are crab populations or snail populations in Southern California that are progressively moving further and further north as a sign of climate change. And that has been documented just by people going to the beach and being like, oh, look at these cool snails or look at these cool crabs. And keeping track of it, or a snail species in the South Pacific that we thought went extinct 100 years ago, and someone on vacation, like on their honeymoon, just snapped a picture of it, and scientists freaked out because they're like, no one has seen this in living memory. And that snail is apparently not extinct, which that's a rare win. So we should be happy about that one. But that's what community science does. I know eBird is a very popular site. It is a great site, and iNaturalist is the one that we use for the challenge because it does require pictures, whereas eBird does not. But these are just an example of some of the concentration of observations we've had over the counties in different years. I go out to Queen, those few dots in Queens and County are me going across the bridge to Terrapin Nature Park every year in the rain. I also put a fun quiz in here, and it wasn't supposed to be a fun quiz where I didn't know the answer, but in the time that I put this picture in there and then I am giving this presentation, I have forgotten what it was. But I went and stalked my boss, who takes 500 observations every year for the City Nature Challenge. I swear it's her favorite day or her favorite weekend of the year. She goes to Blackwater Refuge. And this is one of her observations from last year's challenge, and I do not know what bird that is. So if someone knows what bird that is, please feel free to shout it out.
I think it's a willow.
It could very well could be again. I was supposed to know and I forgot. I'm not perfect, unfortunately. I can just strive to be my best. Yeah, these are some birds that you could identify during the City Nature Challenge. It's always the last weekend in April, and whether you can go out and make observations or you just feel like logging in and helping to identify, both of those things are equally helpful. I always take pictures on my phone and upload them later. I'm not one to like take a picture and then stop for 10 minutes to upload. But it's one of my favorite things. And again, the goal for us is to get as many people out and enjoying nature and making observations as possible, whether they're 6 years old and they are discovering butterflies for the first time and the butterflies are different, or whether it's, you know, a 55-year-old walking around the park is like, why are you taking a picture of that bird? Yes, which is awesome. You looked it up. What is it?
I just took a picture of that. iNaturalist says it's a willet.
There we go. It's a willet.
So I love iNaturalist.
Gotta love iNaturalist. That's why we love iNaturalist. All the taxa in one spot. But yeah, that's honest to God my favorite part about community science is just the possibilities are open to all demographics, all different types of people. And the City Nature Challenge is a great time to get people out. But if I can convert some 10-year-olds into using iNaturalist for an entire year, even if they only make 5 observations a year, that's a win for me. All right, so that is our field conservation teams. Like I said, we're a little bit more focused on the broader outcomes, and then we want to bring people along with us while we're at it. Our conservation community engagement team goes about this sort of the opposite way. So we recognize that we are a large cultural institution in Baltimore City. We have a footprint in different places. So our main building is right in the heart of downtown and along the waterfront. The warehouse, or as I refer to it, the island of misfit toys, because it's where I work, is over in Jonestown, so it's right by the shot tower. It really is where all the randomest, most weird departments are just like, oh, this is a place for you, go work in this warehouse. But we're over in Jonestown, which itself is a historic neighborhood right next to the shot tower on the other side of 83. And then down in South Baltimore, we are one of the partners at Masonville Cove, also a popular birding spot, so I'm sure many of you have been there. But we're one of the founding partners there, and we help to do a lot of community engagement in the area. So those are some of the areas where we're particularly focused, is the ones where we have a direct footprint, and we want to make sure that we're doing right by the community around us, so we're not just taking things from them or existing in their space without providing any benefit. We want to really figure out how can we give back to the community around us, and that is what our conservation community engagement team does. So in South Baltimore, particularly in the Brooklyn neighborhoods and in Curtis Bay, there's a very large Latino population. So there's a lot of specific Latino outreach, including Latino Conservation Day that happens at Masonville Cove every year. It's just about getting people out and enjoying the space. Masonville Cove came to be because when it was repurchased and reclaimed from the dumping ground that it used to be, they asked the community, what would you like this site to be? And they said, we want access back to the water and to the habitat there. And so a lot of the events are designed around community programs, just getting people out and enjoying the space. It's really, really nice. One of my favorite events to go to every year. Same thing, we'll bring things to people in their community. So if there's a community center opening, we'll help them plant a pollinator garden or different things. Sometimes we're providing the supplies, sometimes we're providing the expertise, sometimes we're there as a helping hand and letting the community lead it with us as like a secondary contributor. Sometimes we're providing activities for kids in different areas. They might not have access to some of those green spaces, or they might not be near a park, so we'll lead storm drain stenciling, alley beautification projects. In Jonestown, where our office is, there is a community garden that had kind of gone to the wayside. So our community coordinator for that neighborhood helps to lead community events and to make sure that that garden is maintained. And that is not like a straight pollinator garden, that's literally a food garden. So people in the community can come in and help garden, care for different food, and they can all leave with the harvest that they want. So it is a very, very cool place, and something, again, we're just part of it. We're not spearheading it. It doesn't say National Aquarium Exeter Garden on it. We're just trying to be part of the community and give back as much as we can, and really asking, what do you need from us and how can we help provide that support? And then if there are ways to align that with conservation or stewardship or whatnot, we want to do that because that is what our expertise is in, but it's providing a lot of that community support. Again, some of that is that direct outreach with students, so a lot of helping out at Boys and Girls Clubs or summer camps or things like that, especially on Code Red days during the summer where maybe it's too hot. And the Boys and Girls Club would have had them outside doing extras. They're like, oh man, I now have to entertain these children for another hour and a half inside. I don't have programming because they were supposed to be outside. We'll come in and do seed ball work where they can work and use modeling clay and seeds to make a seed ball that they can take home to their grandma's house, to their community area. When it is nights outside, we'll get them using iPads to do community science with some of those cherry blossoms. So again, a lot of this is approaching the community and asking, what do you need? And finding ways for us to work together and really truly co-design in some of those places. So that is my best effort at describing a lot of the work that the National Aquarium does. But again, it would be really difficult for me to cover everything. So this is usually where I turn things over just to see if anyone has questions about what I've talked about, if you want me to go into anything in more detail, if there's something I didn't talk about that you wish that I did. I don't promise to have all the answers, but I promise to try my very, very best. Yes.
I'd like more information about the City Nature Challenge, because that is something, you're smiling, because that is something that would be right up our alley. And not just here in Howard County, but pretty much all of the Maryland Ornithological Society, of which the Howard County Bird Club is just the local chapter. So it's something that we could help you with.
Excellent.
We did it last year.
Yes.
Well, we need to do better job of
Are you fighting with me? It's okay.
It's okay.
advertising.
Some things to Mary already. All right, so the City Nature Challenge this year, again, it's always the last weekend of April. So this year it is Friday, April 25th to Monday, April 28th. That means that any observation made, so photo taken within those counties from 12:01 a.m. on Friday morning all the way to 11:59 p.m. on Monday night count towards that City Nature Challenge total. So I have some numbers here because I, again, cannot remember these off the top of my head. But across the world last year, there were 2.4 million observations made by 83,000 people. Baltimore, had a hefty contribution to that of more than 10,000 species, or more than 10,000 observations, sorry. 10,000 species would be a lot. 1,600 different species and whatnot. So to us, that's very exciting. Anytime we can cross that 10,000 observation threshold, it's really, really critical. Upping some of those species is also very, very helpful. But again, my biggest goal is, I feel like it's a challenge that a lot of people don't know about, even people within the scene, right? So I want to get the word out about it and get people kind of excited about this community thing. Again, the same way that you're I need to steal this business card idea. The same way you're handing out business cards when you find fellow birders at the park. I need to have City Nature Challenge. Have you heard about the City Nature Challenge cards that I can hand to people? Because the goal is just to get as many people participating as possible. Again, some of the barriers can be that camera, the observations, things like that. And the sooner I can tell people about them, the sooner I can help work through any barriers or find different ways for different people to participate. Because like I said, it doesn't just have to be going out and walking for 40 hours over a 4-day span. That's insane, even if my boss does that. There's lots of different ways to get involved. Yeah.
So these observations are done in iNaturalist?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's not necessarily a great way for bulk, et cetera.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas
What I have discovered about iNaturalist is that if you take things on your phone and then you take your phone and go to your computer, it's a lot easier to bulk add from the computer because it'll let you add them all and then you can group the same organisms together and like lay the photos on top of one another and sort of go through things that way. It is a nuisance. iNaturalist has come a long way since I started using it 10 years ago, but it's not. It has some flaws, but the reason that that's the one used for the challenge is because it's a challenge for all taxa. So it's the best we can do if we want to capture the widest bucket. But great question.
why don't you incorporate input from eBird as well?
I don't know how we've done that in the past outside of the picture problem. The picture problem is where things
Oh,
usually,
right,
yeah, it does require a picture.
Never mind,
And I just want to say, Kurt, we did do it last year, and Sue Muller actually did an iNaturalist outside workshop in preparation for it. So,
Again.
Sue,
Yeah, I'll do it again this year, folks. And you may find this interesting. I was actually doing the City Nature Challenge for the Howard County Department of Recreation and Parks before the aquarium took it over. And I met with folks there, I don't know how many years ago.
It was probably Mara.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I will do that again. Thank you for reminding me, Mary Lou. We could do a training a week in advance for those who don't know how to use iNaturalist. Or just want to go out and have fun with Sue. And then I'll pick a day that weekend to do something for the club, co-sponsored probably with the Maryland Biodiversity Project and do a site for both. Yeah.
Again, that would be awesome. There's lots of different ways to partner. So when we meet with different community organizations, we're asking for different things. It's whether there's individuals that want to participate, that's great. If you want to just send a flyer out within your network and get the word out, that's great. If you want to host events or trainings, that's also great. I will say, again, that's going above and beyond. And we also have a bunch of resources. Like I have 1-page documents on how to use iNaturalist. I have a presentation on the City Nature Challenge and how to use iNaturalist that I would be happy to send that you could then modify so you don't have to create one yourself. So the point is we're the coordinators for this challenge, but we're not necessarily the ones doing all the work. We're just trying to help make it as easy as possible for people to go out and make observations and have fun. Again, whether you're making 5 observations or 100 observations. To me, sometimes we really struggle with, I can go out and observe 7 gray catbirds. And I'm like, I got that. I know that gray catbird. But it's some of the different species that are really, really hard. So even from a group like this, if you're out doing your normal eBird walks and whatnot and getting your bird counts, but you came across a rarer one or a more unique species that you were able to get a photo of, even just uploading those 3 or those 10 would be a significant contribution when a lot of the people taking observations are like me, where I'm like, that's some sort of heron. That's as far as I can get. Yeah. No, I'm not trying to impress you all with my bird knowledge. I'm trying to impress you all with my lack of bird knowledge.
This was great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? So for all of our speakers, you have to come away with a parting gift that you may have seen previously. I put the T-Rex back up there. Anyway, on behalf of the club, we just want to present you with this appreciation coin. And it didn't happen if we didn't take a picture.
And put it in
Put on the
non-natural.
microphone.
Put this in iNaturalist. Will they accept the swan?
Thank you very much. So just a couple things. True confession is, I was working for the other side last year. They didn't know it because I'm a former member of the Nature Forward Board. I was doing a birdathon.
Oh.
And you know your competitors, they do have cards. They were handing them out that day. The one thing that should help the observers is who makes recordings on Merlin? You can put those recordings using your computer into iNaturalist and you can add to your account. Because that's what happened last year when we did the birdathon. We had pictures, but then we didn't have pictures and stuff, but I had recordings, so you can put that in as well. So that's another thing you can do. Anybody learn anything tonight? Was this pretty good or what?
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
I wanna play
So
volleyball
anyway,
again.
the learning will continue next month because Wes and Sue Earp are gonna come talk to us about birding Idaho's Snake River Plain. So I hope to see you all
Great.
back next month.
Excellent.